Can you imagine your life where money is your friend, working with you to achieve all your dreams and desires? If you struggle seeing money as your friend, then join Kathy Cook-Noble, financial advisor and educator on understanding how your money can work for you. It is possible. Now, here is Financially Speaking with Kathy Cook-Noble.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Inspired Choices Network. You're listening to Financially Speaking, and I'm your host, Kathy Cook-Noble. We come together every Monday night, and we tackle something financial or investing related or money related, and all things in my world come back to money anyway, so we can talk about just about anything because that's generally where the conversation leads, where people have either confusion or questions or want an explanation about stuff they've seen or heard on TV, and they don't quite understand it because what I find a lot in my real life, my day job as an advisor and a bookkeeper in a financial services institution, is that most people are trying to understand stuff that doesn't have anything to do with them. They're trying to understand their neighbor, or they're trying to understand what's happening on TV, or they're trying to understand something they overheard and they are not sure if that should be related to them or not. And the truth of the matter is you really only need to understand your own stuff. And I say it all the time, and I'll say it again, that everyone has that ability to understand their own stuff. You don't necessarily have to understand your neighbor or, excuse me, like the Warren Buffetts or any of the people that we see or hear about on TV. But you do just have to understand your own stuff. And that's what we try and do here. We also, every so often, get to have special guests join us. And tonight is no exception. We started a series on youth and investing and all aspects of investing. We've had a young couple talking to us about buying their first home. And we have another special young lady with us tonight who is going to talk to us about investing, how she got involved in finance, a little bit of her story. And we're going to talk to her about how she really helps people her age, actually, understanding finance, because she also knows that she can understand her own stuff, and she does understand her own stuff. And I'm going to introduce you to Ashlee Quinn-Hogan. She was born in a small town in St. Thomas, Ontario, Canada. And from a very young age, she took an interest in finance and business and investing. And currently, and I'm going to say currently, but we're going to talk about that, she's an undergraduate student at the University of Western Ontario, which is now known as Western University. It used to be the University of Western Ontario when I was there. Now it's Western University in London, Ontario, Canada. She was studying criminology and psychology, and she is going to be in the fall of this year, 2021, moving on to another program that we'll talk about with her MA in criminology. And although her specialization, I have not said, is business and finance, she's very well-rounded, and she does understand a lot about business and finance, which is pretty fantastic. She's a firm believer that investing with young people and educating yourself in the world of finance is very important. And she's also a very active volunteer, not just in London, but also in St. Thomas. She goes between both her communities where she was born and where she lives. And she's dedicated to giving back to the communities and also advocating for those marginalized in society. And we will talk to her about that as well. Her interests are reading, baking, hiking, and listening to Financially Speaking, which is also very cool. So welcome to the show, Ashlee.
Thank you for having me.
It is so my pleasure. And I love all the time, I've probably told you this, and Ashlee has a sister that I know as well. And I always say, I love talking to people at your age because there's just so much opportunity, and you have so many years ahead for compound interest and investing. And it's just really exciting when you're at that age. And there's so many more things that we can do. There's always stuff we can do. And I like the excitement of each particular puzzle or each particular plan. But when they're people your age, there's so many opportunities all the way around, not just investing. But tell us a little bit about yourself and where you're at and how you got to where you are right now.
Sure. Like you said, I am a student at Western University. I actually will be graduating in June. I just finished up my final exams for my final year. And come September, I'm going to be starting my master's at the University of Ontario Institute of Technology. Like you said, it's not in business or finance, it's in criminology. But a lot of my interest is in business and finance and investing. And like you said, it's a really important part of my life, as well as criminology and volunteering. And a lot of the volunteer work I do is with, Correctional Service of Canada, as well as, the Forensic Mental Health Center in St. Thomas. And those things are opportunities that I hold close to my heart. But yeah, so that's sort of where I'm at right now. And yeah.
So how did you get into criminology? Because I don't think you started in criminology when you first enrolled at Western.
I absolutely did not start in criminology. It's always been an interest. I've always been one of those kids that was interested in crime shows and true crime novels and all of that. And I always just thought of it as, that an interest. So when I started university, I didn't even start at Western, I started at Queen's, which might ruffle some feathers, but I started there in biology. I had it in my mind that I was going to be some form of scientist, and I finished my first year. Not only did I change programs, I changed schools. I was, kind of off the mark there, but I didn't dislike biology. It's still something I enjoyed. It's actually my minor. So my majors are psych and crim, and my minor is biology because it is something I do enjoy. But when I got to Western, psychology was something that I had thought about, and I was debating between, starting school in biology or starting it in psychology. And so I said, well, I didn't really love the biology program, so let's try the psychology program. And so I tried that and I enjoyed it. And then, I took some sociology courses and decided to just do both. I couldn't decide, so I did both. And I ended up where I am now, which is a great place to be.
Absolutely. And I think for our American friends that are listening, it would be a fair comparison to say, just to give you an idea of how smart Ashlee is, her switching from Queens to Western would be similar to somebody saying, I'm going from like Princeton or Yale to Harvard, or moving around some of those. And in Canadian context, that would be the way that I would explain her changing schools. It was a lateral move for sure. she definitely, they're both extremely good schools. Going to Princeton or Harvard or Yale in the States would be an equivalent of the two of them, wouldn't you say?
I'm gonna say that, yeah. I'm gonna allow.
Yeah, that's pretty much how it is. I know it's different in Canada, and for the American listeners, they might be like, "Oh, I don't know that school." Well, they'll be able to relate to that because that's the Canadian version. And that's fantastic. You've worked very, very hard, and I know throughout the journey that you made some adjustments, and with schools and programs and stuff like that, and that's not easy, even just emotionally, let alone financially, because you had to move. So people know Queens is not in London. It's not even close to London. It's what, 5 hours away?
It's 5 hours, yeah.
Yeah, 5 hours, Kingston, yeah. So you made a huge move geographically too. So how did you come about making those decisions, and who did you talk to, and the advice that you got?
Yeah, so like you were saying, I grew up in St. Thomas, so it's a small town, and towards the end of my high school years, I really got an itch to get out, like get away from St. Thomas, and the easy move is to go to Western, which is in London, which is 30 minutes away. That's what my sister did, and that's what a bunch of my friends did. But I kind of wanted to look at some options and see how I could fare on my own for a bit. And so Queens, was a nice school. Like you said, it's a prestigious school. It's a great school. And so I decided to go there. It was far enough away that I didn't have to, I was kind of on my own, but it was close enough that I didn't have to hop on any planes or anything. And that was kind of a decision I honestly, I made on my own. My family, they gave me a lot of freedom in deciding where I wanted to go to school and what program I wanted to pursue. So it's kind of up to me, and I made that decision. And it was a great decision. I think if, a lot of people say you kind of ended up back where you were, I kind of ended up back in London. But I think that, being away for just that year, there was a lot of maturing and a lot of growing up that happened. And if I didn't do it, I think I would, be wondering right now what would have happened if I did do it. So I'm glad I did. And the transferring of schools was something that, again, was very kind of on my own. I did talk to my sister because she was at Western, and I talked to her about the process. But everyone was excited for me to come home. When I kind of hinted at it, the idea that, well, I'm kind of thinking about going back to Western for my second year. And everyone was like warm and welcoming, it'll be great to have you back in the area. And my sister was happy to have me there as well. Because that's all I have heard about from her university career, because she's been there for like 100 years, is how great Western is. So yeah, so I always had my family involved in those decisions, but they were good decisions.
And for people that aren't completely accustomed to the Canadian university atmosphere, it's not like the US where you apply for all these scholarships and you get a basketball scholarship or a hockey scholarship. Yeah, there's some that definitely exist, but it's not like in the US where it's, especially for male sports, where there's a big deal for football and baseball and basketball and hockey and stuff like that, where you get these huge scholarships and you get this free ride basically for school. You were very strategic and you were very organized with your finances, and you organized yourself so that you knew in advance how much you needed and the planning of courses. And maybe just share a little bit, because I know you're very organized with that stuff. And maybe for people that are starting out in their career with school, how would you recommend that they get themselves organized to keep track of that?
Yeah, so it's definitely something you want to think about sooner rather than later. I know I'm gonna laugh because neither of my parents went to post-secondary, and my dad tells me this story every single time I see him. Someone came to his door to start education savings plans for me and my sister when we were really young. And he said that he closed the door in their face basically and said, my kids aren't going to college. I never went to college. And as soon as, my sister and I were 16, 17, 18, and we started talking about, we want to go to university, he was like, damn, like I really should have, taken them up on that offer. But it was okay. And it gave both my sister and I the opportunity to fund our own educations, and look for opportunities to sort of pull ourselves up by our own bootstraps. And so there's a lot of opportunities for students who don't have education savings plans and who don't come from very wealthy families, because university is a huge investment. And my sister and I were lucky enough to stumble across some of those resources, like OSAP, for example, scholarships, grants. And we went to a fantastic high school that, gave us access to those resources. And on top of that, it was, being diligent and knowing what we wanted and then seeking that out. So, getting part-time jobs and saving money so that, we could pursue this education that we both really, really wanted.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I'm going to ask you, because I know the time between when you graduated from undergrad and I graduated from undergrad is a few years.
Sure.
And there was a big difference in my generation of when the parents paid for school, how the kids behaved at school versus the kids who, just like you described, had to be a little bit more diligent and a little bit more focused on how those mechanics work of getting through school and how they did in school. And we're up to our first break, and I want to ask you to get back. What's your opinion on, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I have clients who pay for their kids' education, and I think it's, excuse me, I think it's wonderful if you can do it, for sure. But there's also a lot of benefit to people who are going to school like you, who are doing it the way you and your sister did it, where you rely on yourself and your wits and your ability to, budget and hold a part-time job while you're in school. And I want to ask you if you think there's a difference in the appreciation or the outcome of marks based on who's paying for school. So we're going to take our first break of the night. Don't go anywhere. We have a very, very special guest, Ashlee Quinn-Hogan. She's with us tonight, and she's going to help us with the younger generation on getting their financial house in order, starting to even look at having a financial house and understanding that everybody does have some kind of estate. So we need to start talking about it as soon as we can. So don't go anywhere. You're listening to Financially Speaking on the Inspired Choices Network. I am your host, Kathy Cook-Noble, and we will be right back.
Too many of us get caught up in the unreal lives of reality television and complete to acquire stuff, which is setting us up to accumulate lots of debt. We're scared, confused, and don't know who to talk to. By tuning into Financially Speaking radio show with financial advisor and educator Kathy Cook-Noble, you'll learn tips you can use to improve your financial health, which in turn can improve your overall health and make for a very happy life. Live a life you can afford and enjoy. It is possible. Listen for Financially Speaking radio show every Monday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 3 p.m. Central, 2 p.m. Mountain, and 1 p.m. Pacific on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. Are you a subject matter expert? Are you here to share your expertise with an audience waiting to hear from you in only the way you can deliver? Are you ready to have your voice amplified across the airwaves? Inspired Choices Network has a global radio platform streaming to millions of people across the world. Professionally produced and supported by an accomplished team every step of the way, you can broadcast from anywhere in the world, knowing your voice matters, and we ensure it is delivered with ease and efficiency. Eager to hear your message, the world awaits. Contact us today to become an Inspired Choices Network radio host. Email becomeahost@inspiredchoicesnetwork.com. This is the Financially Speaking Show with financial advisor and educator Kathy Cook-Noble. To participate in the program, join our live studio audience in our chat room at inspiredchoicesnetwork.com. You can also make the choice to ask or comment by email by sending to Kathy@bookkeepplus.ca. Now back to the program.
Welcome back, everyone. You are listening to Financially Speaking on the Inspired Choices Network. I am your host, Kathy Cook-Noble, and tonight we're here with a special guest Ashlee Quinn-Hogan, and she is one of the experts on youth investing that is going to be helping other young people get started and just understanding a little bit about finance in terms of when would you start, why would you start? But before I went to break, we were talking about education and her and her sister, but specifically Ashlee, they both have a passion for learning and do very well in school and have done very well. And Ashlee's moving on to the master's program in the fall. So before we went to break, I had mentioned that, do you find that there's a difference between the appreciation of somebody paying for your education versus you having either to pay for it yourself or in part pay for it yourself? Did you find that in your undergrad that, because Western University is a fairly well situated school. It's got some very affluent individuals there. And did you find that the quality of the degree or the quality of the pride in the learning, I suppose, was different for those who paid for it themselves or had to pay for part of it versus having somebody else do it for them?
Yeah, I think, like a lot of things, I think that your appreciation for something is higher when you have something personally invested in it. And, you know, education is not a cheap thing. It doesn't come easy to a lot of people. And I know for me, that's all I can speak to really is I really, really appreciate the time and the dedication that goes into the degree, but also that has went into making the money and saving the money that allowed me to actually pursue that degree. And, I have friends whose parents, either contributed fully or contributed, somewhat to their education, which, as you said before, is a great thing. It's a beautiful thing. But I have noticed there is, a little bit less of that appreciation on some counts. I'm not saying that's always the case, but one thing I've got to learn is that when you pay for something on your own, because money is, a hot commodity today, when you got to pay for something on your own, you end up appreciating it a lot more and valuing it a lot more. And, so I'm glad, I wouldn't trade anything for the world. If, my parents were millionaires and they had paid for my university, I'm still, really glad that I got the opportunity to pay for it myself.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you can tell by the way that you've treated your education that that's the case. So let's talk a little bit about investing and getting started, your interest in investing. Do you guys, and I want to know because I'm curious if on campus or in your friends, like if you're, I know with COVID you're not hanging around like you used to, but when you did, does the conversation ever come up about planning for your future and when do you start investing or how do you invest or hey, who here is investing or saving their money? Do those conversations take place?
Not often in my circle anyway. I know that there's some circles on campus and, acquaintances of mine, they've had the conversation about investing, but what that investment looks like can be very, very different. But in my particular circle, there's not a lot of conversation around it. And if there is, it's something that I've brought up. But I remember the example that's coming to mind is a few months ago, I mentioned that I was meeting with you to sign some paperwork for life insurance. And everyone's like, all my friends were like, why are you getting life insurance? You're, 22, I think I was 22, or 23 years old. And, it's not something that people know a lot about. And I think it's, taken for granted.
Absolutely. And in those conversations, because it's funny, I'll tell you, I had this very similar conversations when I was your age, only it was my sister that would say, what is wrong with you? That's so morbid. Why would you talk about life insurance? And now she says to me, because, we're talking 20 years later or 25 years later, she'll say, why didn't you make me? And I just think it's funny because it's easy at my age to look back and say, but I told you. But you are that age and them saying, why are you talking about life insurance? So what do you say to people when they say something to you about, well, why are you investing your money? Or why are you, that's for old people.
Well, my first reaction is to, give them, a little laugh and say, oh, you'll see, like 20 years, then come talk to me. But no, for the most part, I don't enjoy that, I told you so moment. So I'm not looking forward to that by any means. People in my life that, haven't really thought about investing or haven't thought about those more mature conversations or endeavors, I just try and tell them what I know. At the end of the day, it's their decision. It's not mine. But I know my sister, for example, her and I had a lot of conversations. I started investing sooner than she did. And it was kind of a push to get her to take that leap as well. And to my knowledge, there's no regrets there, but that's what I try to do with all of my relationships is, pass on what I know and what I've received out of investing in myself and in my future. And people can take from that what they will.
And to tell the truth, is it that hard? When we sat down the first time, was it where you were super overwhelmed and you're like, oh, this is going to be really complicated and difficult? Or is it really fairly easy?
It's the easiest, I don't want to say it's the easiest thing in the world, but it's so easy.
Yeah.
Definitely the fear of the unknown, right? It was something new. So coming into it, I was a little bit nervous, but as soon as you and I met for the first time and we spoke and we made a plan, it was the easiest thing.
Yeah. And staying on the plan, how easy is that if people ask you about that? Because it's an ongoing thing. It's not just, hey, today I decided I'm going to do something. And it's not an everyday where we would talk, but it is an ongoing plan. So how easy is it to stay on plan?
For me, it's like second nature. It's a habit. It's not something I honestly think about every day. But you do have those, the ability to check how your investments are doing and stuff like that. And that's really motivating. So that's encouraging and that motivates me to stay, with the plan. But I think that just knowing that, this plan is meant for your future, to me, that keeps me on track and it, really motivates me to continue doing it and continuing growing that money.
That's awesome. And when we talked about the plan of getting you on track, we talked about it in terms of your future self too, didn't we? And it wasn't just, oh, you're going to be 20 and that's that. It's going to be, well, when you're 30, when you're 40, when you're 80, when you're 100. Just so people know that when we talk about financial planning, it's not just about today. And yeah, the education, of course, we talk more about than we did retirement because that's the stage that you're in. But planning, don't you find that it really is the whole spectrum of time that you're going to be, the different ages you're going to be hitting?
Yeah, and I think like the younger you are, so I think I was 18 turning 19 when I started investing. And the younger you are, I think the more, obviously, the more time you have. So, the more option you have for, different milestones. And like you said, education was a big part of mine. But, it's also like education's ongoing. So we've also started looking at, retirement plans, down payment for a house, all these other things that, are 5, 10, 15, 20 years, even more than that down the road. And so, yeah, like investing young, it opens up all of these areas, as opposed to if you were someone starting out when you were 50, who, just has, retirement to save for.
And do you find that at your age, talking about retirement and the future is because I have different reactions with people where they're like, oh, that's so far away, or I can't even think about that because I can't even imagine being that old. But how is your reaction when you think about, oh, my retirement, which you haven't even started your career because you're just finishing off your education part of it. But how does that affect you? Does it give you some sense of calm and security knowing that you have a plan, or does it give you a feeling like, wow, that's just so far away, I can't wrap my head around it?
It's absolutely reassuring, because, like you said, it is, 40 plus years in the future, but it's definitely coming, right? Whether, it's, whether I want to admit to it or not, it's something that's going to happen. So why not prepare for it now? One of the things that I like to think about, not just in the financial aspects of my life, but in every part of my life is, instant versus delayed gratification, right? You can either, enjoy something and have it easy now and hard later, or you can, sweat it out a little bit now and then have it easy later. And I always choose to go with the latter, which is, not necessarily that it's a hard thing to invest money, but to, put that money aside and not enjoy all of, reap all of its benefits right now, but put that away for later so that in 40 years, I have that. And it's delayed gratification, and it's, it's easier later. So I rather deal with the, maybe not having the 2 vacations a year right now.
Yeah, and it kind of works out because with COVID, you're stuck at home studying anyway.
Exactly.
So it should be a year where it's easier for people to invest, but I can tell you it's not happening so much. And do you find in your age group, I know it depends on what group you're in, and I know you mentioned on campus and like other schools, they might have investment clubs, in the business school, I think you probably see a lot more of that than the general campus. But did you ever see anything like that in school, or were you ever a part of any of those clubs, either before university or during university?
Yeah, like you said, I know there's definitely, I'm sure that Ivy Business School has something going on over there, that I'm not very familiar with. But in high school, it's not really mandatory. Like none of my friends took, business classes or classes on finance or anything like that. But I did. I took, business and accounting, and that's where I got the bare bones, the bare basics of my knowledge. And that's where my interest developed. But what I find is there's not a lot of resources or information out there available to people my age in particular. And then they fall into this trap of not realizing it until they're in their 30s or 40s that, crap, I should have learned this sooner.
Yeah, absolutely. And perfect timing because we're up to our second break already. Can you believe it? Time flies in cyber time, I guess. So we're going to take our second break tonight. And when we come back, we're going to talk to Ashlee about what's next. And she's off to do her master's, like I mentioned, but that's not going to be in London. So that's another change in venue. So when she comes back, we're going to find out what that looks like for her and what that does to her, changing her life once again and uprooting herself and going someplace else. So don't go anywhere. You are listening to Financially Speaking on the Inspired Choices Network. And we are very, very excited and privileged to have Ashlee with us tonight, because she is going to help us, just like the other youths, with helping the younger generation understand about finance and investing and taking some of the fear out, because sometimes it's easy when your parents tell you or somebody your parents' age tells you, but it's entirely different to hear it from someone your own age. So don't go anywhere. We will be right back.
Too many of us get caught up in the unreal lives of reality television and complete to acquire stuff, which is setting us up to accumulate lots of debt. We're scared, confused, and don't know who to talk to. By tuning into Financially Speaking radio show with financial advisor and educator Cathy Cook-Noble, you'll learn tips you can use to improve your financial health, which in turn can improve your overall health and make for a very happy life. Live a life you can afford and enjoy. It is possible. Listen for Financially Speaking radio show every Monday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 3 p.m. Central, 2 p.m. Mountain, and 1 p.m. Pacific on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. Money is complicated, right? Actually, no, it's not. You don't have to be a trader on Wall Street to get a handle on your money. TV shows often instill fear to keep you believing you can't understand it or do anything yourself. If dealing with your finances brings up a lot of other F words, then you need to read All Ladies Should Use the F Word, A Guide to Loving Your Finances by Cathy Cook-Noble. Cathy helps you take control of your finances and leave the other F word, fear, in the dust. This is the Financially Speaking Show with financial advisor and educator Cathy Cook-Noble. To participate in the program, join our live studio audience in our chat room at InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. You can also make the choice to ask or comment by email by sending to Cathy@bookkeepplus.ca. Now back to the program.
Welcome back, everyone. You are listening to Financially Speaking on the Inspired Choices Network. I'm your host, Cathy Cook-Noble, and we are excited because we have a special guest tonight, Ashlee Quinn-Hogan, and we've been talking about youth investing. We're also excited at the network because we have a new mobile app, and it is down. You can download it now. It's available now. It's super easy. It's fantastic. Kind of like the way Ashlee describes finance, it's easy for people to do and easy to access. So download it from Apple or the Android app. You can listen live. You can enjoy our podcasts and TV episodes wherever you are now with your smartphones. And you can also join us in the chat room too. So click on the shows, scroll to the bottom, and then click chat room. And you can go check it out. It's absolutely free. It's just search for Inspired Choices Network. And while you're there, join the contest, because there's a contest going on right now with the network. And all the details are on the app, on our website, or you can reach out and email any of the hosts and we can get that for you as well. So InspiredChoicesNetwork.com is where you can see everything, or through the Inspired Choices Network app. And Ashlee, we were just talking about, before we went to break, we were talking about what's next for you, where you're going next. What's it look like for you in the fall? Because we said you're going to be doing your master's degree, but you're doing it at a different school. And where is that school? Like, how far away from where you are right now?
Yeah, so it's about 2 hours from London, give or take, depending on how fast you speed. But in Oshawa, so Ontario Tech, is where I will be ending up in September. Yeah.
And what's next on your list? You're looking to do your master's degree, and then you might be there for a few years, huh?
Yeah, we might. There's some ideas kicking around in my brain. We might sprinkle in a PhD, but one step at a time.
Yeah. Yeah, some planning was going into that, that's for sure. So tell us, what's getting started, like you have a I always say you have a very, and it's not like I talk about you all the time, but every once in a while I do use you as an example of how you got it together. And you have a pretty unique perspective from a lot of youths, and I feel bad because when people talk about kids in their 20s and they're young adults, not kids, but they hear all these kids they're not holding a job, they're not doing this. And I think there's a couple instantly, and you're one that pops to mind. I'm like, no, she's doing it right. And when you got started, what's one thing you wished you had known, maybe back when you were 18 or 19, when you first started, before you started investing? What's something you wished you had known then, or even known earlier than 18 or 19?
I guess I wish I would have known, how easy it is and how rewarding it is to invest. Because, like I said earlier, before our break, there's not a lot of resources available to students, 17, 18, 19, when that's the age that you actually should be thinking about those things. And resources, in terms of school, in terms of their parents, because a lot of the time, the parents are at that age where they're just getting started. So it's unrealistic for them to put that expectation on their child as well. But I wish I would have known, a little bit more about how easy it is to invest and how important it is for, young adults to have that future started.
Absolutely. Yeah. What's been one of the big, because I know you mentioned, and I agree with you, there's not a lot of super resources out there, but what is one of the resources that you would say was pretty helpful to you?
I think the main one that's coming to mind is, I've been out of high school for a few years, but there are opportunities in high school to take courses in business and accounting. And I know it's not directly related to, investing and finance and things like that, but it gives you a taste of how important it is to gain that financial literacy and to gain some aspect of, I should start thinking about this now. And I know in my high school business class, there's a program in St. Thomas, and it's actually all over Southwestern Ontario, called Junior Achievement. And I'm sure most of us are familiar if you're from the area. But they came to our business class, and they're going to business classes all throughout high schools in St. Thomas, and talking to students about how important, it is to consider business. And that was one of the extracurriculars that I did, and I think I was in grade 10 or 11. And even that gave me my first taste of what it's like to, look at the finances of a business and just, gain experience looking at why finance is an essential part of everybody's life and a part of, daily life as it is.
Yeah, and that's actually a really good program that you brought up too, Junior Achievement. And for those of us that are familiar with it, and those of you that aren't, I'll just share a little bit that's where businesses and the youth come together and through the schools, and they directly have business, community business people guide them on understanding how to put business plans together, and a bit of entrepreneurship. Really, it's kind of like training or teaching a little bit of entrepreneurship for people in high school, so that they learn a little bit about how to understand reading numbers and why it's important to know what your costs are in certain things so that you can make a profit in business. But it's the same principles in your personal life as it is in your business. You want to make sure there's more money coming in than there is going out at the end of the month. And I think that's a really good concept for people to learn, and a really good principle that they should get a good handle on. So that's very good, that program. I'm glad you brought that up. That's really a good one. What's some advice that you would give to people, and what age would you give them advice to start looking and talking about money?
Start now. Doesn't matter how old you are. You could be, 17, 18, you could be younger, you could be older. It's never too early to start. You don't want to, be that person. I have those family members that are always like, I should have started when I was your age. Don't be them. Be the person that starts, when you're 18, 19, 20. Whatever age you are, now is the time to get started, and to really start thinking about, your financial future.
Yeah, absolutely. Great advice. So we've got a couple years left of school now. What does it look like when you're out for you? What kind of career are you thinking you're going to pursue? Maybe a career in finance? I don't know.
Yeah, at this point, I'm kind of all over the place in terms of, what my degrees are and what my, my knowledge base is. Like you said, I have 2 years of, my master's to see, what I like in the field of criminology. My research is going to focus around reintegration and recidivism. Those are 2 things that are very important to me, and I'm fairly confident that that's where my career is going to be headed, is in the area of looking at how programs and policies can be implemented and altered to account for more effective reintegration and rehabilitation of Canada's prison population. But I'm also considering a PhD, and a couple of the programs I'm looking at there, one is forensic psychology, and that would take me a little bit more into the prison system and get a little more hands-on. So right now, nothing's set in stone, but definitely I'm a big advocate for, working with prisoners in Canada and working in the criminal legal system in Canada.
Yeah, absolutely. And the path that you're on, because you've done so much planning and you're very aware of your situation and your finances and where you're going to live and good on the planning and stuff. Do you go forward into this with excitement, or do you go into it with a little bit of like, whoa, I'm not really sure where I'm going to end up yet? Or is there anything that you're fearful about, or how are you approaching all of it?
Right now, it's still mostly excitement. It's, moving. So I'm going to be leaving. I'm going to be moving 2 hours away. The first time I've lived outside London in about 4 years. A new school, new peers, a new, topic of study, a new degree. So right now it's a lot of excitement, but, the fear will trickle in. It's inevitable, change is something that's scary to human beings, but I think more than anything, I'm excited to sort of, uproot myself again and branch out and, see what Oshawa has to offer, see what, this master's program has to offer, and see how I can, the next chapter of my life, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And how have things changed for you? Because obviously with COVID happening and the new changes that we have under, social distancing and online learning and all that kind of stuff, how has that affected you currently, and how is that going to affect your future program?
Yeah, all my school, and I know a lot of the universities, if not all of them, they're really, determined to be back in person full time in September. And I'm all for that. I haven't been in a classroom in over a year. Yeah, it's been like this whole last year, I haven't stepped foot on campus for an academic purpose anyway. But which, it's kind of, not a great way to spend your last year. So I'm hoping that come September, I will have that opportunity to be on campus. Either way, if we're online, which at this point, nothing will surprise me anymore, I'm still going to make that move. And, London's given me, a lot. So it's time to, see what somewhere else has to offer, regardless of, whether it's going to be in person or not.
Yeah, excellent. It's been a year, eh? Wow.
Yeah.
A year goes fast.
Absolutely.
So does an hour, because we're up to our third break, if you can believe it. So we're going to take our third and final break of the night. And when we come back, we'll get Ashlee's final thoughts. And I'll put her in the hot seat and just ask her if we had reverse roles, what should I ask her that I didn't ask her and that she would like to share with us. So don't go anywhere. You're listening to Financially Speaking on the Inspired Choices Network. I'm your host, Cathy Cook-Noble, and our special guest tonight has been Ashlee Quinn-Hogan, and she will be joining us right back. So don't go anywhere.
Too many of us get caught up in the unreal lives of reality television and complete to acquire stuff, which is setting us up to accumulate lots of debt. We're scared, confused, and don't know who to talk to. By tuning into Financially Speaking radio show with financial advisor and educator Kathy Cook-Noble, you'll learn tips you can use to improve your financial health, which in turn can improve your overall health and make for a very happy life. Live a life you can afford and enjoy. It is possible. Listen for Financially Speaking radio show every Monday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 3 p.m. Central, 2 p.m. Mountain, and 1 p.m. Pacific on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. This is the Financially Speaking Show with financial advisor and educator Kathy Cook-Noble. To participate in the program, join our live studio audience in our chat room at InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. You can also make the choice to ask or comment by email by sending to Kathy@bookkeepplus.ca. Now back to the program.
Welcome back, everyone. You are listening to Financially Speaking on the Inspired Choices Network, and we have had a very special guest tonight with us, Ashlee Quinn-Hogan, a very extraordinary young lady who is starting her master's program, pursuing that in the fall, just graduating from her undergraduate graduate degree at Western University in London. Has taken a very, very good, and I'm going to say easy approach to investing, in the sense that she makes it very easy to understand, and she understands it all her stuff herself. And it's something that I think is just incredible, because she lives exactly what I believe can happen, is where you can understand your own stuff and you can start early and you can be involved and you can start these great habits at a younger age. And I just think it's a wonderful thing. That's why we're doing a series with some younger investors and younger individuals, because I personally think they get a bad rap. they get a lot of bad press about their work habits and buying houses and financial responsibility. And I think, you know what, there's some pretty spectacular youth out there, and I just happen to be lucky enough to know some of them. So I'm really grateful that you came, Ashlee, tonight. And before we went to break, I was asking you, what have I missed asking, or what is it that you'd like to share that I haven't brought up tonight?
Yeah, I guess one thing would be just for young people that are listening, or parents of young adults, you don't have to have a massive sum of money to start. That's the beauty of having time and starting early, right? Like I said, I've funded my own education. I've had the opportunity to access my own finances and to assess those and to utilize those my own way. And that's the beauty of investment and starting young, is that you're giving yourself, or in the case of parents, you're giving your child that opportunity to start looking at their future. And it doesn't have to be, some giant sum of money that's, coming from wealth or anything like that. You can start small, and over time, the beauty of time is that you have that compounding for you. So I think that's something important to note as well, is that you don't have to come into it with a ton of money. Start with what you have and then work from there.
Yeah, that's great advice. You're absolutely right. And so with that, what would you say financial freedom looks like for you? If you could say, hey, my financial freedom picture is this, what would that look like?
For me, I like having, the freedom to do, eventually. Right now, I am a young adult and I am very cautious about what I do, but eventually, to have that freedom to spend, money on things that I want, and not necessarily, luxury, extravagant things, but having the freedom to, spend that money the way that you want to spend it, and knowing that you're not, just throwing money out there, but having a plan for spending it, and then having something to fall back on, which is right now, that's the purpose of my investments, is I always have that there as sort of, a support in case something were to happen. that's my financial freedom is having something to fall back on.
And do you find that just having started financial planning and obviously you mentioned life insurance and that, does that just give you it's funny because just on life insurance, people are always of two minds. They're either, I'm too scared to talk about it because if I get it, I'll die, or they're afraid that if they don't get it, that something's gonna happen to them. So I get the two extremes usually. But do you find that just having that in place gives you a little bit of relief and comfort to not be reckless, but to take a little bit more risk in terms of going to try new things and even travel to new places or different places once we're allowed to travel more freely?
Absolutely. It's different when you have, money that, you kind of are dependent upon, right? That has to go to bills or rent or whatnot. But to have that, investment as something that, if you have issues with your car or, you do have a family emergency or something, you have something that can back you up. And that, gives me, freedom, and it gives me confidence to say, well, I have that money that's going to back me up. So why not, take that vacation that I haven't been on in 5 years, or spend money on, this, this friend get together that, I've been putting off because of money or whatnot. So I think that's also a positive thing that comes from it.
Very good. And is that something down the line as a reward for yourself? Let's say when you graduate from your PhD program and you finish your master's, you finish your PhD, is there something that you have on the horizon that you're going to reward yourself with? Maybe a little indulgence of your own, like maybe a trip, or there's a special pair of shoes you got your eye on or something like that?
You know what? Honestly, it's not something I've thought about, but now, I'm thinking that maybe I'm going to be planning a trip. With COVID, I try and traveling something it's also very important to me. So I'm trying to travel as much as I can. And obviously that is nothing right now during COVID. So maybe what I'll do is I'll save up for a big one at the end of my master's or my PhD, just as a reward. And I do think I deserve it.
You absolutely deserve it. You've got a lot of years ahead of you and a lot of studying and sacrificing for your time. It's not just about money. There's a lot of time that people may not realize is an investment as well. And time is the only commodity that we can't control or get back. And that's that one thing that you are putting a lot of time into, you're investing in yourself by doing that. And I think that is fantastic. I'm so excited that you were able to join us tonight. And I'm very grateful that you agreed to come on tonight and share a little bit of your perspective. And I definitely wish you all the best, because you do deserve a trip at the end, and I think you should plan for it.
Well, thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Is there anything else that we haven't touched on, either for school or for investments? Because we have about a minute left where we can share a little tidbit with anybody. As far as education goes, it's not just about investments and how you pursued it. It's about doing well and getting through school too, especially you adjusted from full on campus to COVID, don't know what we're doing, kind of in between, to full on COVID. So any inspiration there?
Yeah. We're at a point, and I think that COVID's allowed us to see this better than anything, is you kind of have to go with the flow. You got to roll with what's thrown at you, and learn to see the positive in what you're given. COVID brings out a lot of the negativity in the world. And I think if you want to embrace that negativity, that's totally your choice, and that's the beauty of it. But I think that you can choose to be positive, and choose to see COVID as a time for self-growth.
That's a perfect way to end. Thank you so much, Ashlee.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for choosing to listen to Financially Speaking Radio Show. Kathy Cook-Noble will return next Monday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 3 p.m. Central, 2 p.m. Mountain, and 1 p.m. Pacific on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. We hope you'll join us. Until then, have the best week of your life by making the choices that bring you all that you desire.